to go over the assignment for this week really quick. So I've actually decided, I was like looking at the assignments, and it was supposed to be like, you know, weekly assignments for the next, like through week 7, and I'm like, that's stupid. What if we just have the assignments for the rest of the quarter so you guys can actually just like work on your final instead of being pulled in like 30 different ways. So you're done with weekly assignments now. Huzzah. Yeah, I'm like, hopefully that's like good for people. I don't know. But either way, so from now on, you'll basically just be doing stuff for your final. So this week, you're going to take that 3D floor plan that you made last week, theoretically everything should be to scale, and you're basically going to focus on basically finishing up like the walls and any like doors and stuff in there. So first off, walls, you pretty much never find like a perfect 90-degree angle, so you're going to want to go through and like Game Kids, just add a tiny bevel to the corners of your walls. Anim Kids, you know, smooth it with extra edge loops. And this goes for like, you know, inner curves of walls, outer curves of walls, because again, you pretty much never find like a perfect 90-degree angle in a wall. It sounds really stupid, but having that little bit of bevel in there actually does make things look a lot more polished and nicer. And then you're going to go through and add stuff like definitely block in like the windows and doors. You should put in, you know, molding on the floors and ceilings, maybe around the windows. So not like a lot of times places like won't have stuff around, you know, not everywhere has crown moldings, but at least in most modern buildings, I find you usually do see floorboards, or what am I saying? Molding around like the base of the floor. It's honestly probably just because it's a convenient way to like hide the gap between the wall and the floor itself. So you're gonna like, again, look for all that kind of stuff, and then just, you know, put that stuff into your scene. And when I say put it in your scene, I don't mean block in. I mean like if you have, you know, designs in that model or in that molding, like model those designs in, get it looking really finished. So the idea basically is that after this week, you would have, imagine that you're going to looking to rent an apartment or like buy a house. You walk into that space and there's no furniture in it. Basically anything that you see in that empty space when you go in, so like floors, walls, doors, molding. Hopefully your house comes with doors if you're but like anything that you would see in that house is the stuff that you're going to be working on and focusing on for this assignment, so that whenever you do your renders, it basically looks like a, you know, finished rendered empty apartment or whatever space that you're doing. Does this make sense? Cool. So again, like just anything in an apartment, so like hinges on doors, molding on doors, if your doors have like detail, whatever, that should be modeled in for this week. And again, just make sure that everything is made to scale, which theoretically it should be last week, so it should be pretty easy to like piece stuff together and just sort of, you know, attach everything and have it work properly. Quickie silly side note, but if you have, so I don't care if you just like if you have like your walls and they're all nicely attached together and rounded and all that good stuff, and they're just like a plane clipping through for the floor. If you have molding, you're not going to be able to tell it's clipping through. If you don't have molding on your ceilings, you should attach the ceilings into your walls and also have that bevel on that connection between wall and ceiling as well. If you have crown molding, again, I really don't care because I'm not going to be able to see that it's clipping. Any questions on that? Cool. As nitpicky as it sounds, I will be checking specifically for wall beveling. And yeah. The other thing that I want you guys to do is also start just like blocking in the 3 main objects that you guys are each making. So like the hero object, furniture, and decorative object. And I don't really care if you guys go in and like, you know, swap those into your actual scene. But just start blocking them in. And this is, when I say blocking them in, I mean do whatever makes sense for you in your workflow. Like I want whatever you make this week to actually be usable for next week. So next week, and I think for the next like 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be pretty darn modeling intensive, where it's pretty much just like model your whole hero object, like model all your decorative objects. So I want you guys to get a jump start on that this week. And again, I'm not looking for just sort of, like I don't really care. I don't need to see a bunch of sort of cubes that are made to the scale of pieces of your object. Make something that's going to help you actually make that object, whatever that looks like. I would, as weird as this sounds, I would almost rather you, if you're just going to sort of throw a bunch of random cubes together you're not going to use. I would rather you straight up not do that part of the assignment, because doing that is taking time away from, you know, refining your lighting or the room or like whatever else you have to be doing. Does this make sense? Cool. And if you want, like, again, I don't really care if you want to get like, go in and like just make a bunch of pieces of your main object or whatever and be like, hey, I made like all the buttons or like all of this one detail for it. Like, that's totally fine, because that's like a productive thing to do. And kind of whatever works for you, just mostly just get a jump start on your actual modeling. So that's the thing to do. And then in the room itself, just throw in, you probably have these block-in, obvious. So you probably have all this stuff done from like last week's stuff, but if there's any like major fixtures in the room, like tables or like giant fireplaces, things that would be, I guess, you know, stuff you'd like run into if you were walking through the space, couches, furniture, that kind of thing. Just like throw in some like really basic sort of vague shapes for that. It doesn't need to be crazy fancy. The idea behind that basically just being like, again, sort of see how everything looks in your scene, and also see how it affects the lighting. Because the other part of this assignment is also start fiddling with your lighting for the final. So just as a reminder, you're going to be doing two versions of the lighting. One that is day lighting and one that is night lighting. And it's not a bad idea to just sort of go through and, again, like see if there's like a table that's casting a super weird shadow across your whole scene. Better to realize that now before you know, block or like model everything in crazy detailed. So are there any questions about that? Cool. For the lighting, I'm expecting that this is going to change over the next few weeks, so try to get it, you know, as refined and like nice looking as you can. But again, like just be aware, like you might need to go back in, like once you get your objects in or you start playing with textures, like modify some settings or colors of your lights, that kind of thing. So I'm not expecting anything to be like crazy final, but just kind of try to get in the start, you know, playing with your lighting and seeing if you can get kind of the effect that you want. And then for game kids, and this is important, this will be a really great time to start rendering in Engine if you're going to, because again, I have not really done lighting or rendering out of any game engine before. Personally, I had people I can harass about it, but like I've never done it personally. So if you're gonna have issues with it, much better to find that out week 5 than week 10, because then I might have some useful chance of like actually helping you troubleshoot that along the way, and figuring out the issues beforehand. So I would highly recommend, if you're rendering an engine, to actually go into the engine this week and start rendering stuff. Also, if you're rendering an engine, rendering in Maya is like kind of pointless. But yeah, so that's pretty much the lighting bit. And then just pick 2 interesting angles for each of your lighting scenes, so like day and night, and just render those. If you want to pick one angle and render both day and night at that same angle, totally fine. Doesn't really matter to me all that much. And then for what to submit, just a zip file with the Maya scene of your space, and renders with the different lighting schemes, and then any references used for lighting in the objects. And if you could include those, like those like 5 or so pictures that you chose as a group to help sort of define the type of space you're making, if you could throw those in, just so like it helps me remember what the actual project is that you guys are working on, that would be lovely. So that's pretty much this week. Are there any questions about this? Oh, huzzah. All right. That's pretty much all the assignments.